Hello, this is Sophie Lawson from sophielawson.crunch, and this is episode 259 of the Sophie Art Podcast, which is a little podcast to do about the art and things with my co-host lilDENNiS. But the weather today is horrible, so lilDENNiS is at home resting whilst I do the podcast. As you can hear, there's loads of birds out here today. They seem to be enjoying the wet weather. So I hope this one isn't too noisy, because it's quite windy as well. But this one's going to be about... I had a little realisation last night. The podcast is going to be about things fear is holding me back from. And when I thought about it, it made me realise that this is very much like the same thing I was talking about on previous podcasts, about how there's an entanglement between like opposites. So let's get into this one. Yeah, I got a horrible feeling it's going to get quite windy in a minute. So in my notes, what I've put in my notes is the entanglement of fear and desire. And what I've thought, I did this morning whilst I was at work, I drew a little drawing. And what it is it's a person inside of like a bubble, and that bubble is connected to two opposites inside of another bubble. But the way to look at it really is you've got two opposites which are entangled inside of one of those infinity signs, like the 8, and then the human is entangled with those two opposites inside of its own like infinity thing. So it's almost like the human is entangled with these opposites. So it's like a double entanglement. And I've talked about this before I think this is why everything comes down to paradoxes. Because, that's right, he had his a bloke walk past with his head down. You couldn't see then. But this is the first time. So what happened was, when I was thinking about this social anxiety and stuff, what it made me realise was, I've talked about this before a lot, it's that thing where the negative shapes, if you focus, as an artist, you learn that if you focus on the negative shapes, you see the negative shapes. If you focus on the finger, you see the finger. It's very noisy around here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cross the road and then I'll continue, because it's going to be very noisy down here. But I love the sound of cars on wet tarmac. It reminds me of Gran Turismo 3 on the PlayStation 2. It's one of the first games to have a really beautiful sounding wet surface. Listen to this, look. I love that sound. Oh, I've got wet feet now. These are new shoes, but I've already got them wet. It's one of my biggest pet peeves is wet feet, wet socks and things. So what I thought the other day was, because I realised, what was it I was talking about? There was something I was talking about, and I said, like social anxiety, if let's say one of them is you think you're always in the way, if you focus on always being in the way, you'll end up being in the way because you're putting your energy on being in the way. Whereas if you focus your energy on, I'm doing my job and I'm not in anyone's way, then your mind will think that you're not in the way. And it's only what the mind thinks which determines whether you're anxious or not. It's not going to be noisy for much longer, so I'm about to go up this back road. So then what I thought was as well, it's exactly the same with like fears. If you've got a fear of something, if you focus on the fear, because I've talked about this before, and what I'm realising is it's one thing to understand what's happening, it's another thing to like change. It's quite hard to change. That's what I'm noticing. So what I've put in my notes was so fear and desire are entangled with each other. Very much like time and money, everything is entangled with something else. So what I've put in my notes, what you focus on grows. So if you focus on the fear of doing something, you're going to be more scared of doing it. If you focus on the desire, why you want to do it, you won't forget about the fear. You won't forget about the fear, but the desire will be so strong that you'll do anything. So what happens? I see like entanglement as like two bar charts, and if one goes up, the other has to go down. So I've put, if fear is greater than desire, you will never do it. If desire is greater than fear, you can do anything. That's what I put in my notes. And I said you need to focus on the desire, not the fear. And this is when I thought to myself, this is very much like negative space with the hands again. So what it's making me think is, I'm just wondering if everything in life is all about what you're focusing on. So in other words, we're determining everything by what we're focusing on. So then I start thinking, well, why am I always focusing on the fear? If I know this is what's happening, why am I always focusing on the fear? And I don't know the answer to that. It's probably just because I've always focused on the fear or something. And then I've put meditate on your desires, because I was thinking, when did I achieve something that was like way more scary than my desire, and I managed to get the desire greater than the fear to achieve it. So one of them was transitioning from Kevin to Sophie. Another one was going to art class. There's loads of them when I look at it, and what I've realised was most of them, what I did was I meditated on. Like when I went to art class, I meditated on, before I went to art class, I was meditating on going to art class. And it's almost like by meditating on it, I was like practicing doing it. And somehow it just made it less scary. That's what I'm thinking. So I've answered my own question here. So the things that I'm scared of doing, where the fear is, but I've got a desire to, what I'm noticing, what's obviously happened here is, at the minute, the desire is less than the fear, so that's why I'm not doing the things I want to do. And if I really want to do them, all I've got to do is meditate on them. And lucid dreaming as well, because you can practice things, you can practice facing fears in lucid dreaming. It was brilliant. So what I'm thinking is, all these things I've been doing over the years, they're almost like techniques. And it seems to me like they're techniques based mainly on sorting out this entanglement between, really what it is it's a negative and a positive, an entanglement of negative and positive. So like fear is a negative, desire is positive. That's what I'm thinking. So what I've put here is, so what are the things, what is things fear is holding me back from? When I thought about it last night, I put interviewing guests, and sadly I've almost just given up on that now, because it's so scary, the thought of doing it. Yeah. But I know that I'm going to do it in a strange way. But maybe at the moment isn't the right time or something. But then I also know that could be like a way of never doing it as well. Because it's never going to be the right time until you do it. But you can't do it when the fear's strong. So what you got to do is, you got to make the desire to interview guests stronger than the fear. And the fear is all things about what other people think of me. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I really want to film videos inside the comic shop. Because I would love to go into the comic shop and sort of like film with my camcorder, just film the comic shop, and maybe even talk to the comic shop owners and stuff. But at the moment, there's no way I could do that. Well, it feels like I couldn't. But I know I could. Because the other thing is, all you got to do is do it. It's that first little bit that's the hardest bit. And once you've done it, you'll think, because I've had this before when I've done something that I was scared of, and I think to myself, why was I so scared of it? So again, what it is the mind is like lying. So what's happening is, when I'm focusing on the fear of something, the mind's creating these stories, I suppose. Yeah, and then what happens there is, it's almost like the mind. It's that thing again where you're scared. You've got a fear of fear. In other words, you're afraid of nothing, but you're making it something by focusing on it. Yeah, because what happens is, you're afraid of something. If you focus on something that isn't real, but you believe it's real, it will become real. Which is very much like the placebo effect. That's all that is. If you believe that this sugar cube is going to help you, if you believe that enough, then it will. If you believe it won't, then it won't. And it goes the other way as well. You might have something that will help you, but if you don't believe it will, then it won't. Joe Dispenza did a brilliant book called The Placebo Effect, I think it was. I love that book, and it talks about that in that. That's a brilliant book, that is. I still prefer the other one he did, the breaking the habit of being yourself, because that was very similar. Oh, I love the sound of that as well, rain hitting pavements and stuff. Hey, yeah. It's cool, it is. Hey, there's a bigger one down here. That's what she said. It's cool, isn't it? The other one I've got is talking to people. Yeah, talking to people. I've got a fear of talking to people, but what I've noticed is, when I talk to somebody, there's nothing to be afraid of. So again, there's lots of lying going on. And if you believe it, it becomes real. So this is like free will. This is why free will, we are like superheroes. And our superpower is free will. I've said this before. You could have a fear of 100%, which means you're never going to do something, but your free will free will can actually go against 100% probability. Because again, really, this entanglement thing, all it is really is just like it's a numbers game. Like fear is a percent. Fear starts out at 50%, desire 50%. What you focus on, you're changing the numbers, like up and down. So all it is, and then the probability. This is the thing. See, free will is like the thing that breaks entanglement. It's almost like that's it. Consciousness is free will, which is awareness. As I said last time, in the last podcast. Morning. So it's almost like free will is... Free willy. Free will. Yeah, free will actually breaks the rules. That's what it feels like. Time traveller over there. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's a time traveller. People wearing yellow coats are time travellers. That's from the TV show Dark. One of the best things ever if you love time travel. What's another thing here? Yeah, another thing that fear holds me back from doing is relaxing around people. Because what I've noticed is very rarely am I relaxed. The only time I'm relaxed is when I'm on my own. When I'm on my own, when I'm with my mum, I think that's it really. Yeah. I feel, and even when I'm with my mum, I'm not as relaxed as I am on my own. So like that's what I'm saying. I said this before. It's almost like I've got a base level anxiety, and it's all to do with people. And I can't work out what that is. Well, I think it's to do with when I got strangled, but I don't know. So this is it's weird it is. And then another thing I've put, like little everyday things. So fear is holding me back from doing little everyday things. And those little everyday things, they all build up to big things, which is also something I learnt with like transitioning. But I called it baby steps. You do it with drawing as well. If you want to get good at drawing something, like character design, you want to get good at learning Procreate, you got to break it down into little steps. That's the thing, you see. If you focus on the big thing, it's very much the same thing as what I was talking about. Let's say you want to learn digital painting. If you focus on learning digital painting, the big thing, you'll never do it, because that's going to just be too scary. What you do is you turn it into something little and say, I'm going to learn how layers work in Procreate. I'm going to learn the one brush tool. I'm going to learn the eraser tool. Things. And then before you know it, you've learnt Procreate. Yeah, it's brilliant. So there is, in a strange way, like a science to overcoming these fears. But then I also wonder whether I'm just thinking too much about it. And I wish I could somehow just do something without thinking too much. But then there's part of me that thinks thinking about it is good. I think thinking about it is good, but you've also got to just do it as well at some point. That's it for this one. It's a very wet day, and that's it. I think the weather added to the atmosphere though, and my notes are soaking now. All soaking wet they are. So all that's left is this week's inspirational quote, and it actually goes to Because again, last night I remembered something. Feel the fear and do it anyway. There's a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. And that I need to get that book back again and read it. Because there's a bunch of books over the last sort of 10 years which I've read them, and obviously they've changed my life. One was Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. One was Robert Wagner's Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. Susan Jeffers' Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Because what happened was, after I read that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, for about, I would say, 4 months, I was like fearless. Because I look back at the things I was doing back then, and there's no way I could do that at the minute. So somehow that book made me sort of feel invincible. And I just remember it being a brilliant book. Da-da-da. So I'm gonna find that book again. And that's the other thing, you see. What she's basically saying in that quote is, because I remember, well, you can basically get your desire 100%. Somehow there's still going to be an element of fear there. Because they're entangled with each other. So even when fear is 0%, it still has to exist. Because it's entangled with desire. So what she's basically saying is, because I remember in the book she talked about, you're going to face something, feel the fear and do it, you'll do it, and then what happens is there'll be something else you want to do, and you'll have a new fear. So no matter how far you go, you're always going to be afraid of something. It's quite mad, it is. So that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. It's episode 259, The Entanglement of Fear and Desire. That's quite cool. I think that'd be quite a good title for a book. So all that's left is this week's inspirational quote. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Susan Jeffers. Susan Jaffa Cakes. Jaffa Cakes. Susan Jaffas. Susan Jaffas. Jaffa Cakes. Jaffa Cakes, man. Jaffa Cakes. Jaffa Cakes. I like eating Jaffa Cakes. Jaffa Cakes. Jaffa Cakes. I like eating Jaffa Cakes. Jaffa Cakes. I like eating Jaffa Cakes. Hello? 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 Do you like that?